Japan, the land of the rising sun, or is it the land of the setting sun? Japan is the world's third largest economy, and ever since it was opened up to the world when the American naval commodore arrived in 1853 with the goal to open Japan up for trade, from just the sight of the steam-powered ships alone, Japan gave in and in the years that followed came out of their isolation. Adopting Western ideals and inspired by the great European empires of Britain and France, pursued their own imperial goals. With colonies in Korea and, of course, invading China and much of Asia during the Second World War, becoming one of the most powerful nations in the world. However, following the Second World War, Japan was decimated, with its country in rubble and its economy destroyed. The Empire of Japan itself was dissolved. However, miraculously, Japan turned itself around, becoming the second largest economy in the world. But following the 1990s bubble burst, has been facing numerous problems since. Most critically, it's Japan's aging population. Japan is classified as the world's first hyper-aged country, with up to 30% of its population over the age of 60, with amongst the lowest fertility rates in the world, with an average birth rate of 1.36, which is far below the replacement level. Japan's population is expected to dip below 100 million at some point this century, and by 2060 would have lost around 50% of its workforce, down from 83 million to 44 million. In 2060, Japan's demographics will be 47% in the workforce, 40% over 60, and 13% below 19. This will mean that 47% of the population will have to support 53%, which will lead to a massive economic fallout, with less people meaning less people to consume and buy products, meaning less money that would be pumped into the Japanese economy. Face numerous social problems, as there could be discrimination towards older people. Families will struggle to support elderly parents and relatives. Furthermore, this could create a growing gap between the younger and older generations of Japan, with intergenerational conflict in Japan a real possibility, as Japan's older people will take up a larger voting proportion, which will cause the government to spend more money on the elderly rather than the younger generations. The reasons for Japan's low fertility rates include its strong working culture, with the culture first developing in the 1970s, as people would work hard to try and get a job, whereas in the 80s, when Japan's economy was booming and the second largest in the world, growing rapidly in this time, as Japan's economy was considered a miracle following the destruction and chaos inflicted on the nation following World War II, many Japanese worked overtime to try and maximize promotions. Whereas in the 90s, when the bubble burst in the Japanese economy, many Japanese worked hard to keep their jobs. This, as a result, has caused many social impacts through karoshi, in which people will often be worked to death, with people in their 30s often dying of heart attacks due to stress. Furthermore, because of this strong working culture, Japanese people have less time to raise families and have children, with women in the workforce who do not wanting to have children as they could lose their job, and part-time work isn't really an option, as well as the fact that men play a limited role in childcaring. It is also considered socially unacceptable for women to have a child outside of marriage. Furthermore, the greater opportunity for women in the workforce has meant that they have more of a role in society than just childbearing. To solve these issues in which Japan is facing, the Japanese government has encouraged people to take up all their annual leave. However, Japanese people rarely do, as they don't want to be seen as letting their company down. The Japanese government has also tried to solve this problem through numerous policies, such as the Angel Plan, which was first introduced in 1994. The aims of this plan was to encourage people to have more children, as well as to increase the participation of women in the workforce. However, this policy has proven largely ineffective, though it was revised in 2009 by creating family-friendly working conditions and encouraging Japanese people to take up all their annual leave. But this has proven largely ineffective, as Japan reached peak population in 2010 at 120 million, with the population having since dropped to 126 million. The Japanese government has also encouraged the use of social media through dating apps such as Tinder to try and help couples meet in person, in which they hope they marry and have children. Japan has also hoped to increase the participation of elderly in the workforce to try and combat this decline in the numbers of people in the workforce, with many elderly retaining jobs as most want to keep their minds mentally and physically active, as well as to remain socially active. The current retirement age in Japan is 65, though this age is unlikely to remain, as it will likely be increased in the future as Japan's population continues to age. Japan is deemed as the model for the hyper-aged country, as it was the first country to reach this fifth stage of development, with Germany and Italy having since joined Japan as hyper-aged countries. Russia too faces similar problems of a declining population through low birth rates. Because of this, many countries look to Japan as a model, as they are the first to confront this problem, with 100 other countries soon expected to face this similar problem. Japan, as a result, has invested heavily in robotics, with robots expected to help in medical procedures, serving the mundane tasks as the amount of people to look after the increasingly amount of elderly people decreases. Robotics is a good investment for Japan, as it could lead to Japan shipping out the technologies that they have created to other nations which will face this similar problem. Japan, however, lacks aged care facilities, with Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka all lacking these facilities. Tokyo currently has 400 aged care facilities. It will require 1,800. By 2050, the rate of elderly people is expected to grow across the world, from 5% to 10% in Africa, 34% in Europe, 28% in Asia, 26% in North America, 24% in Oceania, and the Latin Americas. Most of the developed world faces the problems of low birth rates, with much of Western Europe and declining populations in the former Soviet Union. Migration has also been deemed as a possible way of dealing with Japan's shrinking population, with the amount of foreign-born workers in Japan growing by 5.9% in the past 5 years. However, migration is unlikely to work, as most Japanese believe Japan has a unique culture that would be eroded away by any form of multiculturalism. Overall, Japan has many issues that they will be facing with the aging population, and they will be seen as a model for the years to come, as many other countries soon reach this stage of development. And what Japan does will be heavily monitored and viewed by other countries, with their policies perhaps being implemented by these other nations. Thank you guys, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment for more. And also, don't forget to check out my other channel, Channel Blainer. Link in the description below. See you next time.